Hi, welcome to our Arts and Blooms series. We're just giving a little bit of wetting the palate, so to speak, of what you're going to be seeing on May 20th and 21st at the Old Red House at 68 North Main Street in Woodstown. So we're going to be showing four main disciplines: gilding, marquetry, French polishing, and we're going to be doing some George Hollingshead frames that are local to Woodstown through the looking glass. But here I just want to speak just a tad bit about sculpting. When I was in Paris getting my degree at the Louvre Museum, I was moonlighting as an apprenticeship with one of the top-rated sculptors in Paris, and doing this at night, 6 nights a week, about 3 hours a night. It's very different to pick up a wood carving chisel, which these are. I have about 800 in my French armoire here, and each chisel has different widths, different sweeps or shapes. Most are honed or sharpened on the bottom bevel. Some are done on the top bevel. It's very, very important to keep your chisels safe. I do alternating rows, generally speaking, here, because literally it could take me 3-4 hours to put an edge back on a chisel such as this. It's almost worth buying a new chisel at that point. So you must be very careful of protecting these. This is the utmost. Some of these are Swiss, some of these are French made. Most I've ground to cut in heavy oak, because when I was training and carving in Paris, sculpting in Paris, I was sculpting in oak, not pine. So very, very different, classically trained. What we would do at the Eco Boule, we would do everything in clay. We'd mask everything, we'd sculpt everything out, rough it out in clay, and then we would move over to wood. So here I'm carving a coat of arms for a client here, and it's roughed out and I'm in finished stages. But you know, just tool handling is very important, and as the European trained, particularly French trained, you need to secure your base elbow down, and you have one plane coming across, so you have control, so it's not slipping and moving like this. You have total control of the carving tool. And there's a lot of levering involved here. Levering and shaping. This particular coat of arms is going to be gilded, so we're not going to take it down much more than it is. So this is almost finished as far as sculpting goes. If I was doing this as a piece of wood to be finished, all these areas, all these coves, the volutes, everything would be sanded 220 or very, very smooth for finishing. But for the purposes of laying up gesso over this, this is about where I want it to be. Because remember, with gilding, you're recutting, you're literally sculpting. You're going to sculpt the gesso after it's filled in the nooks and crannies. So there's no reason for us to carve too deeply into our wood substrate, because we're going to fill a lot of that in with gesso, and we're just going to have to evacuate it again. So you want to just give a general persona of the shape, as I've done here, and then we're going to go to gesso. Again, I'll be carving something or sculpting something in wood, off and on with the marquetry and the mirrors in Woodstown on May Arts and Bloom. And this was just to give you a little bit of tease of what we're doing there. So let me show you some more sculptings I did. This is one I'm doing in conjunction with gilding. I'm showing you some layers of gesso here. But this is a series of instruments, just a wall plaque, typical of the Venice school, the Italian school. And I was trying to demonstrate a little bit of gesso here, and the gesso gets stippled on up to 12 coats here. It's super, super smooth. Okay, but and this is out of pine. So carving out of maple is a whole new different ball of wax. This is the famed Philadelphia cartouche. This is quite the replica copy from Thomas Affleck of Philadelphia. This cartouche adorned one of the famous tall case clocks in the Philadelphia Museum of Art. And it'll sit up in the front of the pediment, and it'll have a tilt similar to this. They quote the Philadelphia peanut. So it's very, very famous. But a very different type of carving. You need the secondary bezels when you're doing maple or you're doing oak. And my other copies of a Venetian mirror. It's quite the challenge. A lot of hollow, a lot of through carving on this. Again, preparing this just for gesso. And this is we're going to continue. When I was living in Italy, I was carving various, particularly Florence. This is a Florentine mirror, and a lot of depth to it. I believe this is about 1.5 inches deep. So these are not applied pieces. These are all carved and undercut, so very, very intricate. But again, these pieces are to be gilding. So a Florentine mirror. And back stateside, a couple years ago, I did a series of these. This is a copy of a Venetian mirror. Again, all to be gilded, but for a later time. So when I was teaching classes on wood sculpting, these were samples for the classes to do. And just another word about the carving tools. Unfortunately, in general, Swiss made has been one of the leading makers or suppliers of carving tools stateside for many, many years. A good quality tool, a good economical tool. The metallurgy in the shanks is so-so. It's better suited for softer woods. And unfortunately, as a sign of our times, these are some of the better tools I've ever carved with. These are made in Paris. It was actually made by Peugeot. Peugeot started making various mechanical things back in the last quarter of the 19th century. And it's been sold out of one location, one boutique in Paris, the oldest tool seller in the world, Gainard-Millon, in the 11th arrondissement. And unfortunately, about 5-6 years ago, new owners took over, and they didn't want to propagate the fabrication or the forging of some of the greatest carving tools in the last 200 years. So these are done, unfortunately. I have a set of about 40, but I have a set of about 400 of the Swiss made. So each complements each other in one degree or another. And keep in mind, some of these tools and projects will never see the light of day 1 or 2 times a year for a few minutes. But when you need a tool of a certain sweep and a certain width, a certain profile, it's good to be engaged in the total collection of carving tools. And it takes too long. Some of my contemporaries look on the cheap. They're looking for tools at auctions and flea markets, but it takes too long. So again, just some tips. Thanks so much, and we'll see you on Arts in Bloom.